The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species sat in their seats, watching the holographic display in the center of the room. The display showed a small blue planet, Earth, home of the humans. Ambassador Veleth of the Kiran Collective stood at the speaking platform. His tall gray body was still, and his 4 eyes looked at the crowd with confidence. He had spent 300 years studying humans. He knew them better than anyone in the galaxy. "My fellow council members," Veleth said, his voice calm and certain. "I have completed my final report on the human species. My conclusion is simple. Humans are afraid of war." A low murmur went through the crowd. Some species nodded in agreement. Others looked curious. Veleth continued, "Look at their history. They have fought terrible wars among themselves. Millions died. Cities burned. They created weapons that could destroy their entire world. And what did they do after each war? They cried. They built monuments to remember the dead. They wrote laws against fighting. They protested in the streets against violence. The display changed to show images from human history. Soldiers in trenches, burning cities, mushroom clouds rising into the sky. Then, it showed peace marches, people holding signs that said, "No more war." Children laying flowers at graves. "Every time they fight, they swear to never fight again," Veleth said. "They are a species that fears conflict above all else. They will do anything to avoid it." The council members looked at each other. This was important information. The Tauric Empire had been asking for permission to take 3 human colony worlds. The Empire was strong and aggressive. The humans were new to the galaxy and weak. "What do you suggest we do about the Tauric request?" asked the council speaker. Veleth made a gesture that meant he did not care. "Let them take the colonies. The humans will complain. They will send angry messages. They might even cry. But they will not fight. They are too afraid." The vote passed easily. The Galactic Council would not stop the Tauric Empire from taking the human worlds. After all, what could a species of cowards do about it? Far away from the council hall, in the cold darkness of space, a ship called the Remembrance floated near a small station. The ship was old but well maintained. It was a military vessel from Earth, sent to protect the outer colonies. Captain Park Tejo sat in his chair on the bridge. He was a man of 45 years, with gray in his short black hair and lines around his eyes. He had been a soldier for 20 years, but he had never wanted to be one. He had joined the military because his father had served, and his grandfather before that. It was a family duty. The message from Earth Command appeared on his screen. Tejo read it slowly. His face did not change, but something dark passed through his eyes. "Captain?" Lieutenant Kim Yuna looked up from her tactical station. She was young, only 30, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. "Is something wrong?" Tejo did not answer right away. He read the message again. The Galactic Council had decided to let the Tauric Empire take 3 human colonies: New Busan, Incheon Station, the farming world of Daegu Prime. 2 million humans lived on those worlds. The council had decided their fate without even asking. "They think we will not fight," Tejo said quietly. Yuna stood up from her seat. Ensign Cho Hanbin, the young communications officer, looked confused. He was only 23 and had never seen real combat. "What do you mean, sir?" Hanbin asked. Tejo turned his chair to face his crew. The bridge was quiet. Everyone was listening. "The aliens have studied us. They have seen our wars. They have watched our peace movements and our protests. They have concluded that humans are afraid of war. So, they have decided to give our colonies to the Tauric." Hanbin's face went pale. "But sir, my sister lives on New Busan. Her children go to school there. They cannot just give it away." "The council believes we will accept it," Tejo said. "They believe we will complain. And then, Do nothing. Yuna's hands formed into fists at her sides. Her voice was hard and cold. They have made a mistake. Teho nodded slowly. He looked at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, a fleet of Torek warships was preparing to take what did not belong to them. Somewhere out there, 2 million humans were about to learn that the galaxy had abandoned them. Ensign Hanbin, Teho said. What do you know about human history? Why? Hanbin blinked. Sir, tell me what you learned in school, about our wars. The young officer thought for a moment. We learned that war is terrible, that millions died, that we should never let it happen again. We learned about the peace treaties and the United Nations, and how humanity came together to stop fighting. Teho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That is what they teach children. That is the story we tell ourselves. But there is another story. An older one. He stood up from his chair and walked to the viewport. His reflection looked back at him from the glass. Humans did not stop fighting because we were afraid of war, he said. We stopped fighting because we were afraid of ourselves. We saw what we could do when we let go of our control. We saw the camps where we killed millions of our own kind. We saw the cities we burned. We saw the weapons we built that could end all life on Earth. He turned to face his crew. We did not build our peace because we were weak. We built it because we knew we were too strong, too dangerous. We put chains on ourselves because we understood what would happen if we did not. Yuna finished his thought. Her voice was barely a whisper. And now someone is going to force us to take those chains off. Teho returned to his chair. His eyes were hard now. The gentle captain was gone. Something older had taken his place. Something that remembered what humans truly were. Send a message to Earth Command, he said. Tell them the remembrance stands ready. Tell them we remember. The stars burned cold outside the viewport. The galaxy did not know what it had done. But it would learn, soon enough. The Torek did not wait. Commander Gorath was eager to prove his strength. He wanted glory for his clan. He wanted to show the galaxy that the Torek Empire was powerful. His fleet arrived at New Busan on a quiet morning. The colony was a beautiful world of green hills and blue oceans. Humans had built cities there over 50 years. Families had been born and raised. Children played in parks and went to schools. Life was peaceful, until the sky turned dark with enemy ships. Gorath looked at the planet from his command ship. He was a massive creature, covered in thick red scales. His teeth were sharp. His claws could tear through metal. The Torek were warriors. They had conquered dozens of worlds. Begin the invasion, he said. The humans will surrender quickly. They always do. Landing craft dropped from the fleet. Hundreds of them fell toward the largest city like metal rain. Gorath watched with pride. This would be easy. The intelligence reports said humans feared war. They would see the Torek ships and run away crying. But on the surface, something else was happening. Governor Baek Sujin stood in her office, watching the ships come down. She was a small woman with kind eyes. Before she was a politician, she had been a doctor, a children's doctor. She had spent her life healing sick kids and comforting scared parents. Her hands were shaking as she reached for the emergency controls. But her voice was steady when she spoke. Activate all defense systems, she said to her staff. Send the emergency signal to Earth and open a channel to the people. The broadcast went out across the entire planet. Every screen, every radio, every device carried her voice. Citizens of New Busan, she said. The Torek Empire has come to take our home. The Galactic Council has decided we are not worth protecting. They believe we will surrender. Because we are afraid. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was harder than steel. They are wrong. This is our home. Our children were born here. Our parents are buried here. We built this world with our hands and our hearts. And we will not give it to anyone. She looked directly into the camera. Today, we fight. Not because we want to, but because some things are worth dying for. Across the city, people who had never held weapons went to the militia stations. Teachers, farmers, shop owners, engineers. They took rifles and armor. They formed lines. They prepared to defend their home. Among them was an old man named Oh Minho. He was 73 years old. His hair was white and his face was covered in wrinkles. He walked slowly, with a bad knee that hurt in cold weather. But Minho had not always been an old man. 40 years ago, he had been a general in the Earth Defense Force. He had fought in 3 wars and killed more enemies than he could count. Then he had retired and tried to forget. He had become a gardener. He grew flowers and vegetables and tried to wash the blood from his memories. Now he picked up a rifle for the first time in 30 years. The weapon felt familiar in his hands, like an old friend he had hoped never to see again. General O? A young militiaman recognized him. What should we do? Minho looked at the sky. The enemy ships were landing. He could hear explosions in the distance. Something cold and dark moved behind his eyes. The gardener was gone. The general had returned. We make them pay for every step, he said. Every street, every building, every room. We make this planet cost more than it is worth. The Torek landed expecting surrender. They found war. The first wave of soldiers marched into the city like they owned it. They were confident, strong, armed with the best weapons their empire could make. They had conquered many worlds and never lost. A human woman stood in their path. She was young, maybe 30. She wore civilian clothes and held a rifle that looked too big for her. She did not run. She did not hide. She raised her weapon and fired. The shot hit the lead Torek soldier in the face. He fell. His squad stopped in shock. Before they could react, more shots came from windows, from rooftops, from behind cars and walls. The humans were everywhere. Commander Gorath received the first report an hour after the invasion began. He read it with confusion. What do you mean, resistance? He demanded. The intelligence said they would surrender. They are fighting, Commander, the officer replied. Our forces have taken heavy casualties. The humans are not retreating. They are attacking. Gorath slammed his fist on the console. Then send more troops. Overwhelm them. He sent more troops. The humans killed them too. General O Minho led a group of defenders through the streets. They moved from building to building, setting traps, ambushing patrols, disappearing before the enemy could react. The old man fought like he was young again. His shots never missed. His orders were clear and calm. They expected sheep, he told his people. Let us show them wolves. By the end of the first day, the Torek had lost 2,000 soldiers. They had taken only 3 city blocks. Governor Baek Sujin was still broadcasting, still calm, still refusing to surrender. Commander Gorath sent a message to his superiors back home. His claws trembled as he wrote the words, "Something is wrong. These humans do not behave, as the report said. They fight with no regard for their own lives. They take wounds that should kill them and keep fighting. They do not break. They do not run. They get stronger." He looked out at the burning city. Fires rose into the night sky. The sound of weapons never stopped. What are these creatures? He whispered to himself. What did we wake up? On the ground, a young human boy watched his mother fire a rifle from their apartment window. He was only 12 years old. He should have been in school. Instead, he was loading ammunition for her. Are you scared, Mom? He asked. His mother looked at him. There were tears in her eyes, but her hands were steady. Yes, she said. I am very scared. But sometimes, you have to do scary things to protect what you love. She turned back to the window and kept fighting. Across the planet, the story was the same. Humans who had lived peaceful lives became warriors overnight. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. Because someone had threatened their homes and their families and their children. The galaxy had woken something that should have stayed asleep. and now it was too late to put it back. The news from New Busan spread across the galaxy. The humans were fighting. The peaceful species that everyone thought was weak was resisting the mighty Tauric Empire. It was impossible. It made no sense. But it was happening. Ambassador Veloth watched the reports with growing confusion. He had spent 3 centuries studying humans. He was certain they would surrender. His research was perfect. His conclusions were sound. They are bluffing, he told the council. They will stop fighting soon. They always do. It is in their nature. But the fighting did not stop. Day after day, the reports came in. The Tauric were losing soldiers. The humans were not surrendering. Something was very wrong with everything Veloth believed. On Earth, the human government was working with desperate speed. President Ryu Jihye sat in the war room, surrounded by military officers and advisors. She was a calm woman who had won elections by promising peace and progress. She had never wanted to lead her people into war. But some choices are made for you. What are our options? She asked. Fleet Admiral Kang Do-hyun stood before the main display. He was a tall man with a hard face and gray hair cut short. He had served in the military for 40 years. He had hoped to retire without ever seeing real combat. We have 2 paths, he said. We can accept the Tauric demands and abandon our colonies. 2 million people will become slaves or refugees. Or we can fight. The room was silent. Everyone knew what fighting meant. Humans had worked so hard to leave their violent past behind. They had built a civilization based on peace and cooperation. Now they were being asked to remember the old ways. Dr. Shin Eunbi, the president's psychological advisor, spoke up. She was a small woman with glasses and gentle eyes, but she understood the human mind better than anyone. If we fight, she said, we cannot fight halfway. The Tauric will not stop unless they are completely defeated. We will have to unleash everything we have buried, everything we have tried to forget. President Ryu closed her eyes. You mean we will have to become what we used to be? Yes. Eunbi's voice was sad. And that will change us. Maybe forever. The president looked at the faces around the table. Military officers who had trained their whole lives for a war they hoped would never come. Politicians who had built careers on peace. Scientists who had created wonders instead of weapons. Begin preparations, she said quietly. But keep negotiating. Buy us time. Admiral Kang nodded. He understood. The diplomacy was not about finding peace. It was about getting ready for war. Across human space, the preparations began. In shipyards that had built merchant vessels and exploration ships, workers started new projects. Old designs were pulled from secure archives. Weapons that had been forbidden for generations were manufactured again. Ships that had been built for peace were modified for war. On military bases, retired soldiers received messages asking them to return to service. Most of them said yes. They were old. They were tired. They had spent years trying to forget what they knew. But when their people needed them, they answered. General Han Ji-young had been a history teacher for 20 years. Before that, she had commanded a special operations unit. Her students knew her as a kind woman who loved books and cats. They did not know about the medals in her closet or the scars on her body. The students will wonder where I went, she said to her husband as she packed her uniform. He kissed her forehead. I will tell them you had to help some people. Do not lie to them. Her eyes were hard now. The teacher was gone. The soldier had returned. Tell them the truth. Tell them their teacher went to war because bad people hurt innocent families. Tell them sometimes good people have to do terrible things to protect others. In research labs, scientists opened files that had been sealed for generations. Weapons technology that humans had decided never to use again. Energy weapons that could melt cities. Biological agents that could destroy entire species. Nuclear devices far more powerful than anything from the old wars. Dr. Park Seon-woo, the lead weapons researcher, looked at the files with horror. We promised ourselves we would never build these things again. His assistant, a young woman named Yoon Murray, stood beside him. The Torek did not give us a choice. They attacked our people. They killed our children. They made this decision for us. Seonwoo's hands shook as he began working. He was not a violent man. He had become a scientist to help people, not hurt them. But his niece lived on New Busan. His brother's daughter, a little girl who loved dancing and painting. He would do anything to save her. Anything at all. The diplomatic talks continued for 3 weeks. Human ambassadors met with Torek representatives. They discussed terms and conditions. They argued about boundaries and compensation. The Torek believed they were winning. They thought the humans were stalling because they were afraid. They were half right. The humans were stalling, but not because of fear. Admiral Kang received daily reports on the preparations. Ships were ready. Weapons were manufactured. Soldiers were trained. Old strategies were studied and updated. How much longer do you need? President Ryu asked him. 3 more days, he replied. Then we will be ready. She nodded. I will keep the talks going. On the final night before the deadline, Admiral Kang stood alone in his office. He looked at a photograph on his desk. It showed a young woman smiling in a graduation gown. His daughter. She worked as a nurse on one of the colonies. She had chosen healing over fighting. He had been so proud of her choice. Now he was about to order thousands of young people like her into battle. Some of them would die. Many of them would be changed forever. The peaceful future they had worked so hard to build would be delayed, maybe destroyed. He picked up his pen and signed the final orders. The diplomatic channels would close tomorrow. The war would begin. May our ancestors forgive us, he whispered. May our children understand. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere among them, the Torek were celebrating their easy victory. They had no idea what was coming for them. The human war machine was awake. And it was hungry. The human fleet came without warning. One moment, the space around the Torek defensive line was empty. The next moment, it was filled with ships. Captain Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Remembrance. His eyes were cold. His voice was calm. He had spent weeks waiting for this moment. Waiting and preparing and trying not to think about what he was about to do. All ships, he said into the communication system. Begin the attack. The human fleet opened fire. Lieutenant Kim Yuna had always been known for her calm personality. She never raised her voice. She never got angry. She solved problems with logic and patience. But now, sitting at her tactical station, something different looked out through her eyes. Target their command ship first, she said. Her voice was flat, like she was reading a shopping list. Ensign Cho Hanbin watched her with growing unease. This was not the officer he knew. This was someone else. Someone older. Someone dangerous. Lieutenant, he whispered. Are we not going to offer them a chance to surrender? Yuna turned to look at him. Her eyes were empty of warmth. Did they offer New Busan a chance to surrender? Did they give those families time to flee? Hanbin had no answer. He turned back to his station and did his job. The battle was not really a battle. It was a massacre. The Torek had expected human ships to be weak. They had expected human weapons to be primitive. They had expected human tactics to be simple. They were wrong about everything. Human ships moved in perfect coordination. They had trained together for years, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Now that training paid off. Each ship knew exactly where to be and what to do. Human weapons were not primitive. They were terrifying. Energy beams that cut through Torek armor like paper. Missiles that were too fast to dodge. Electronic attacks that disabled enemy systems in seconds. Human tactics were not simple. They were ruthless. Tae-ho had studied the Torek for months. He knew their weaknesses. He knew their fears. He used everything against them. Commander Gorath watched his fleet burn from the bridge of his command ship. He could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were everywhere. They struck from every direction. His ships exploded one after another. "Where did they get this power?" he screamed at his officers. The intelligence said they were weak. The intelligence said they feared war. No one could answer him. The intelligence had been wrong. Completely, totally wrong. "Commander," his tactical officer said. His voice was shaking. "We should retreat. We cannot win this fight." Gorath wanted to argue. He wanted to say that the Torek never retreated. But he looked at the display showing his dying fleet, and he knew the truth. They had kicked something that should not have been kicked. Now they were paying the price. "Signal all ships," he said quietly. "Fall back to the homeworld." But the humans did not let them fall back. The human ships followed. They chased the retreating Torek vessels and destroyed them one by one. There was no mercy. There was no escape. On the surface of New Busan, the tide of battle changed. Human reinforcements landed in the city. Fresh soldiers joined the exhausted defenders. Supplies arrived. Medical teams helped the wounded. General Oh Minho stood in the ruins of a building, watching the new troops arrive. He should have been happy. Help had come. His people would survive. But he had seen what the human soldiers were doing to the Torek. He had heard the reports from space, and he felt something heavy in his chest. "We are winning," a young soldier said, smiling. "We are actually winning." Minho nodded slowly. "Yes, we are winning. But look at what we have become to do it." The soldier did not understand. He was too young. He had not yet seen enough to understand the cost of victory. Governor Baek Sujin walked through the destroyed streets of her city. Buildings were broken. Bodies lay everywhere, human and Torek alike. The air smelled of smoke and death. A Torek soldier lay wounded near a collapsed wall. He was young, maybe the equivalent of a human teenager. His leg was crushed. He looked up at Sujin, with terror in his eyes. She should have hated him. His people had invaded her world. Instead, she knelt beside him and checked his wounds. "Why?" the young Torek asked in broken human language. "Why do you help me? We are enemies." Sujin looked at him with tired eyes. "Because this is what separates us from monsters. We can choose to be kind even when we do not have to be." She called for a medic to help the wounded enemy. Even in war, she would not lose her humanity. Even in darkness, she would keep a small light burning. The human counteroffensive lasted 3 weeks. Every Torek position fell. Every Torek fleet was destroyed or captured. The mighty empire that had conquered dozens of worlds was broken in less than a month. On the Torek homeworld, the population watched in horror as human ships appeared in their sky. Not to attack, not to invade, just to show them what could happen if they did not surrender. Commander Gorath sent a message to the Galactic Council. His claws were shaking so badly he could barely type. "Please," the message said, "make them stop. We surrender. We accept any terms. Just make them stop." Admiral Kang received the surrender request on his flagship. He read it 3 times. Then he closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "Inform them we accept their surrender," he said. "Tell our ships to hold their fire." His aide looked surprised. "Sir, we could destroy them completely. We have the advantage." Kang turned to face the young officer. "Yes, we could. And that is exactly why we must not. The moment we start killing because we can, we become what we always feared becoming. We become the monsters from our own history." He looked at the Torek homeworld on his display. Millions of lives, waiting to see if they would live or die. "We have proven we can win," he said. "Now we must prove we can stop." The guns fell silent. The war was over. The war ended in 6 weeks. The Torek Empire, which had stood proud for 8,000 years, was broken. Their fleet was destroyed. Their armies were defeated. Their pride was shattered into a million pieces. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from every species gathered to discuss what had happened. But mostly, they gathered because they were afraid. They had seen what humans could do when pushed. They needed to understand. Ambassador Veloth was given permission to meet with Admiral Kang Do-hyun. The alien who had declared humans to be cowards wanted to speak with the human who had proven him completely wrong. They met on a neutral station, in a small room with a single window looking out at the stars. Veloth sat on one side of the table. Kang sat on the other. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Veloth broke the silence. His voice was quiet, almost humble. I have studied your species for 300 years. I was certain I understood you. I was certain you were afraid of war. Kang did not respond. He waited. Everything I saw pointed to the same conclusion. Veloth continued. Your protests against violence. Your memorials to the dead. Your laws against weapons. Your stories always showing war as evil. How could I reach any other conclusion? The Admiral finally spoke. His voice was tired. The voice of a man who had done terrible things for good reasons. You were not wrong, he said. We are afraid. Veloth looked confused. But you fought. Your people fought, with a fury I have never seen. You showed no fear at all. Kang stood up and walked to the window. He stared at the stars for a long moment before continuing. We are afraid, he repeated. But not of war. Not of dying. Not of our enemies. Then what do you fear? Kang turned to face the alien ambassador. There was something in his eyes that made Veloth want to look away. A darkness. A weight. A memory of terrible things. We fear ourselves. He sat back down, his movements slow and heavy. Like every step cost him effort. Let me tell you about human history, Kang said. Not the polite version. The real one. He began to talk. He told Veloth about the wars. Not just the numbers and dates, but the details. The trenches where young men drowned in mud and blood. The camps where millions were killed just for being different. The cities where children burned alive in nuclear fire. The famines created on purpose to starve enemies. The experiments done on living people in the name of science. Veloth listened in growing horror. He had studied human history, but he had never understood the true weight of it. He had seen the facts without feeling them. Your species has done terrible things to each other, he said finally. Yes. Kang's voice was flat. We have. Every human alive carries the memory of those things. Not as history, as warning. We teach our children about our crimes, so they will understand why we work so hard to be better. He leaned forward. Do you understand now? We did not build our peaceful civilization because we were weak. We built it because we knew what we were capable of without it. Every law, every treaty, every institution we created was a chain. A chain we put on ourselves because we understood the monster that lives inside our species. Veloth felt cold. And we forced you to break those chains. Yes, you did. The Torek attacked our families. They threatened our children. They gave us no choice but to remember what we truly are. Kang stood up again. He walked to the window and looked out at the remains of the Torek fleet, still floating dead in space. The hardest thing we have ever done, he said quietly, is not winning wars. It is stopping them. It is finding the strength to put the monster back in its cage after we have let it out. Veloth thought about the battle reports. The human ships destroying the Torek without mercy. The soldiers who fought through wounds that should have killed them. The look in human eyes when they fought. How do you do it? He asked. How do you control something so powerful? Kang turned back to face him. We remember. Every human remembers what happens when we do not control ourselves. The camps, the bombs, the graves. We carry those memories like weights around our necks. They keep us humble. They keep us careful. He walked to the door, then stopped. Tell your council something from me, Kang said. Humans do not want war. We do not enjoy it. We do not celebrate it. But if you force us to fight, we will fight until there is nothing left of our enemies. Not because we are brave, but because we are terrified of what we might do if we let our fear control us. He opened the door. Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not mistake our patience for inability. And never, ever threaten our children again. He left. Veloth sat alone in the room for a long time, thinking about everything he had learned. 50 years later, the Galactic Council kept a single entry about humans in their official records. It was written by Ambassador Veloth himself. After he spent his remaining years trying to understand the species he had so badly misjudged. The entry read, "Humans do not fear war. They fear themselves. Their entire civilization is a cage they built to contain the violence within their nature. They seek peace not because they are weak, but because they remember what happens when they stop seeking it. Do not mistake their restraint for inability. Do not mistake their kindness for weakness. Do not force them to remember what they truly are. We did. We will never forget what followed. On Earth, the memorials to the Tauric War were built beside the memorials to the older wars. New names were added to old lists. New stories were told to new children. New chains were forged to hold the monster inside. And somewhere in a garden, an old man named O Minho put down his rifle for the last time. He returned to his flowers and his vegetables. He tried once more to wash the blood from his memories. He never succeeded. But he kept trying, because that is what humans do. They keep trying to be better than what they were. They keep hoping that one day, they will not need the chains at all. Until that day comes, they wait. They watch. They remember. And they hope no one is foolish enough to wake the monster again.